It's working. We are live on YouTube. Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday and happy another Sunday Live with Gordana and I. Gordana, how you doing?
Hi, Lucas. I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I am doing awesome. I'm glad the technology's working so well for us. So that's
Me
amazing.
too. Me
Yeah.
too. And I'm so glad because we're going to talk about something that is dear to both of us. It's a question of how to bypass your ego and how to find your inner voice. And I think that we're going to touch upon some archetypes we can use in order to bypass the ego and find the true inner voice, because ego can distract us with stories that are untrue, and those untrue stories can become our life story.
Right.
And we forget that we can change that anytime we want. So we want us to explore this, the voice, the inner voice, and the voice. How do we connect to our own voice? So that's going to be a good one today, I think.
And what we talked about earlier this week is how many people don't like the sound of their own voice. And that is holding so many back from uttering and standing in that power. And I didn't like my voice for so long. And even I mentioned to you, I was like, oh, I have a high voice. And being in the news, coming in from the newsroom, everyone has these low voices. Even my friend Whit Johnson, who's the Good Morning America anchor, we were in the same TV station together in our first TV role. And he just had that deeper voice, that good evening. And I'm like, hey guys, let's come out, let's party. And so I was so self-critical, but it's taken me to be intentional, to get to a place where when I speak, it is now uttered from my soul, not just, an ego.
Yes, absolutely. I can so recognize myself in this. When I started doing interviews some years ago, I found my heart racing every single time I was listening to my own voice. And I'm like, why am I so scared? What is this? Why do I not like my own voice? And I had this idea that I talked very fast. And when I listened back to it, I wasn't talking fast, but to me, it sounded like I was talking fast. I actually talk really slow. I talk almost like I'm meditating or something. And I did not hear that. I heard something else. And I think that I tracked it back to my past because I had to talk a little faster. When I talked to my father, if I wanted to say something before he interrupted me and said no, I had to talk really fast. So I was thinking that maybe when I'm excited or nervous, I would use my voice in such a way that it is a pattern from my past. So it would be talking really fast. And getting to know myself by listening to all the interviews, I could hear that I had the wrong impression of my voice. I was much, much more grounded. I was much more slower in my speaking than I thought I was. So just finding back to that aligned me to some certain power that felt authentic within me, because I had an image of myself as talking really fast when I was nervous. And I wasn't. I had some kind of control over it, and I didn't see it until I aligned with it, listened to it. And I literally had to force myself to listen through this because it was so painful. So I do understand what you're saying when you say that you didn't like your voice. I did not. And I think that people listening or watching this, they probably don't like their own voice either.
Right.
When I have clients, I do a recording and then I send the recording to my clients. And when I ask them, did you listen to the recording? 90% of them would say, no, I didn't. I can't stand my own voice.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, why is that? So we're going to explore that a little bit today, right?
Totally. Yes. It's, I do a lot of work with men, helping men. And there has been historically, we can look at movies from the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. What was a man presented as? Super roided out, really like all muscle, just little talk, barely any talk, no speaking in these movies, just a lot of action and brute force to get what one wants. So men have this skewed view of what masculinity is, what power is, what force is, what all these abilities that we can have truly are. And so I have these men come to my men's retreats that are just jacked, just ripped and jacked, and they're working out all the time. But I tell them that they're not powerful. Doesn't matter how much weight they can lift. Doesn't matter how much bench they can squat. Doesn't matter. If they cannot use their voice, they are weak. And we talk through what the power of the voice actually is. Why they are trying to build their body up is because the little boy's scared. But why is the little boy scared? Because he couldn't use his voice when he was young. And so now they're still trying to buffer against the attack versus coming and speaking and bringing light to the attack. So these retreats, and this is a skill I recommend every single person listening to this take time and do this. And it's going to feel weird because the ego's like, what are you doing? No, this sounds crazy, or people are going to hear you, or what if I've experienced it. Every person I lead experiences the same little chatter in the mind. But I have these men stand there. And if you're doing it at home, you can go and put your face in a pillow. You can go out into the woods or somewhere in solitude. Just make sure no one hears you. You're in a safe place to do it. And I have them think back to the most painful memory and just start expressing the pain and start yelling. I'm like, yell. And they're like, ah. I'm like, no, yell. And they start, and what happens is it's like this meter where they're hearing their voice. They're like, I'm yelling. This is weird. I'm yelling. And I'm like, let it out, go. And so they're yelling. All of a sudden, something around here clicks where they're no longer thinking about yelling. But they actually can hear their voice. And then they start actually yelling, And somewhere around here, I can feel the energy shift. They can feel the energy shift. For the very first time in their life, they actually hear their voice, versus in this spectrum, they're trying to buff it against something coming, or what do people think of me, or this is crazy, or why am I here, or who is this guy, whatever the ego is saying, until they get to hear. And I said, the most powerful person on this planet is the one who can articulate clearly, when I say yes, it means yes. And when I say no, it means no. And I said, if you think the physical body is more powerful than the voice, look at Stephen Hawking. He spoke through, I don't even know, a digital device that took his thoughts and put it on. I said, is that man less powerful than you? The whole world listens to when that man speaks. Even though it's not audible, it's still his voice. But he has no physical form to be strong. You have spent your whole life trying to build up your physical form, but no one listens to you when you speak. It's because you can't hear your own voice. And so this exercise, I recommend people go into a pillow, male, female, doesn't matter, and start to hear, where is my voice? What is my voice?
Speaking of voice, you need to heighten your volume because it's too low, I think.
Oh, is it low? Okay.
Yeah, it's low. So,
all right.
Well, that's a really funny thing. Speaking of voice and having a too low volume. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I love this thing with the screaming, because I think that we are not allowed to scream as children. We are not allowed to express our anger. And this is probably why boys start fighting physically, because they are not allowed to speak their anger. And as a girl, you're not even supposed to be angry, because that's not what girls do. So I think we swallow the voice that will express some kind of anger, or primal screams within us. So when you do that, I'm imagining myself doing this, and I feel like this would feel really weird to do, but I also see how it could help you to connect to something that is primal within you, something that needs to come out, or at least needs to express itself, so that you come in contact with it.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're disconnected from it, and you're carrying it without having a connection to it. It's like carrying a shadow heaviness within you, not allowing it to be spoken. Because the first manifestation in the physical world is the spoken word,
Right.
is the sound. You can have an idea, or in this case, you can have an emotion that has been embedded within you and it is not expressed. So it lives in your body as an expression. But if you allow it out, it doesn't have to stay in your body as an expression. And this is how you cleanse it out of yourself, so to speak. By coming in contact with it, you also accept that it is there as a part of you. It's no longer hidden to you. So it doesn't have to be a hidden part of your masculinity or a hidden part of the masculine energy, because the masculine and feminine energies are not about men and women. We say this all the time. Both of these energies are supposed to work in unison within both men and women. So if you are not allowing that, then you will be carrying on this anger, which is on the masculine side of your energy. And if you do not express it, it becomes a toxic masculinity. And it can become a toxic masculinity within women too.
That's right.
So it's a question of when you express yourself in that way with screaming in the pillow, but there are other ways to do this too. You come in connection to the shadow part of the masculine energy, and you can allow it form, which is harmless because you're not aiming it, you're not directing it towards anyone. You're literally just allowing it to come out of you in the woods or in the pillow. You're not directing it towards a person. So I love the idea. It's really beautiful.
It's incredibly powerful. And I can see in the people that I work with, when it starts to click, there's something happening. And my buddy, who's 2 masters in electrical engineering, very smart engineer, they test everything that they do to their limits. So he's like, you got to know the limit. If you don't know the limit of what you're working with, then you're not able to perform its highest ability. And I take that same principle to our own voice. Most of us don't know how to, like, how loud can we be? How broad can we be? And that roaring of a lion, why is a lion, quote unquote, the king? Because the lion doesn't have, most cats have it's very high and stretched, but when a lion roars, its resonance is it's very wide. The sound that it creates sets a vibrational tone. I'm like, okay, we better listen to what's happening here. And getting to this place for male, female, it doesn't matter, like you were saying, but being able to listen to our voice. And I was afraid of screaming. What is the saying? I don't know. I think you heard the same thing. Children are to be seen, not heard.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So, and we go to these schools and you have to raise your hand and you can't speak and you're called upon, then you might get nervous because you already have this input from your home life of don't speak up. And it's just this pattern of not using our voice. But those who have found out how to use their voice are the most powerful people, for good or bad. Is my sound still off?
Just a little bit more, a little higher. You need to put it.
All right. I don't know what's going on. There you go. There you
go. Yeah, I think it's a good. Yeah.
Okay. But our voice, it's everything.
Yes.
It's everything.
Yes, because you are expressing yourself. The voice carries parts of who you are in its sound. It's like a DNA, only others can hear it. So your voice is that. And if you're not connected to your voice in a good way, like you and me, we haven't been connected to our voice because of our childhood. I see it in my husband, for instance. He had a great childhood and he's strongly connected to his voice, and he can use his voice in a way. I remember when I met him, I felt secure and safe when I heard his voice, because it was resonating on a frequency which was aligned with who he was. There was no incongruence between who he is and what he's expressing through the sound.
Yes.
And I think that everyone has a certain sound, but it's the disconnection in your head when you hear your own voice. If you do not like your voice, then there is a disconnection, and you need to find where that disconnection comes from, as I did when I went back and I said, oh my God, I am not speaking fast. I'm actually speaking really slow. So it's an imagination. There is something within me telling me an untrue story about myself. and to start owning that sound, which is your own sound.
Yes.
While you were talking about the masculine energy, when we look at our society, we would say, well, there's too much masculinity going on here, the patriarchy and all that. We need more feminine energy. And that is actually not the truth.
Right.
That is not the truth. I thought so too. And I see that it is not the truth. What we are seeing in our society is the shadow side of the masculine energy. We are seeing the toxic masculinity. What we need is healthy masculinity, as we need healthy femininity. Yes. And I mean, healthy masculinity is all about calmness, clarity, protection, and direction.
Yes. Yes.
So that would be the masculine energy in both men and women when we are expressing ourselves through clarity and calmness and protection and direction. We are expressing the masculine principle. We are connected to our higher self and expressing it through the principle of love. It comes out as the clear, clean, masculine energy in this reality.
Yeah.
The same goes with the feminine energy. It is about presence. It is about intuition. It is about nourishment. And when the feminine energy is expressed through love, it becomes divine. It creates a divine atmosphere to live in. So when we balance those two in each and every one of us, we become aligned with our higher self, and love becomes the basis of who we are. But if we're not aligned, then we are expressing it through toxic feminine and masculine energy. And usually we are disconnected from our expression, which is always, first thing is the words, then comes the action.
That's right. And a great way the word toxic is a synonym for fear. Any action in fear is toxic. Any action, you can try to protect people, but you do it in fear.
Yes.
It's toxic. You become the savior versus empowering every single person to stand in their own sovereignty and just feel safe whatever we do in fear becomes toxic.
Yes. Everything. When you say protection, if it comes from fear, then it becomes control instead.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So the basis always have to be love. So how do you express protection when you love someone? You say, I am here unconditionally for you. Go out, explore, and come back to me.
That's right. That's right.
That is a protection, because you give them, let's say you have a child, you give it a safety net where it can come back. That is true protection. But if you say you can't go outside because I say so, because there's danger out there, then it becomes control and it becomes a toxic masculinity. So the most important thing is where this voice comes from. Is it rooted in love, the principle of love and trust? Then the voice will carry that energy. Yes. And the child will feel safe. Like when I talked about my husband and the frequency in his voice was protective, but in a healthy way. He wasn't controlling. He was just there for me.
Right.
And there's such a difference, because the word protection, rooted in either love or fear, will become twisted.
Yep.
Unless we are aware of it. It's the same thing with nourishment. Nourishment sounds really, really good, but if it comes from a dark place, then it becomes overprotecting. It becomes neediness. It becomes it becomes almost like strangulation. It doesn't feel good. So we have to find that source to where does the sound come from.
Yes, and this is why everyone, if you're just tuning in, or if you go back and please listen to, this is why doing this exercise is so important, because no one can take the fear away from us. I can't say, I bless you with no more fear. It doesn't work that way. And that's why all these external methodologies, be it religion, even going and joining others in something, unless you and I as individuals go and face our own fear, No one can remove that fear from us, which is why this exercise of using our voice is so powerful, because we bring fear. Everyone by default is bringing fear to this exercise. Oh, this is weird. This is crazy. What does it sound like? I don't know. I don't want to sound like my abuser when I was growing up. But when we start and start connecting from our solar plexus all the way out through our throat chakra, it is like resonance. I mean, I have children now. The resonance of it is almost eternal. It feels like, I want to say it's eternal. It is so profoundly powerful, but it takes practice. It takes doing it. And that's why coming to a retreat or being with some people that could do the same exercise, just holding space for someone, just like, all right, we're in a closed room, let it rip. And having someone say no more. And that's what these men's retreats, the guys think they've given their voice. I'm like, you have not given more. And I'm standing there like, let it rip. And they're like, and then when it connects, they feel powerful. They feel peace, actually, because the fear is gone inside of them. Like, wow, my voice is more powerful than my body ever could be. And I don't need to build up my body to protect me. I can build up my body to move now and live life, but it's not this, I got to be strong to look safe. Now it's, I'm safe wherever I go because I know my voice.
Do you have men crying when they connect?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, the crying, I think when I was doing that spectrum, because I see it as a spectrum, the crying begins about right here when they start hearing their voice, like, and then they get a little, like the fear comes out as tears and they're pushing through this. And then all of a sudden, when it's over here, when it really clicks with them, and the tears go away, and it's almost like a new car, like drive this car, and they're like, whoa, what can this thing do? Throw it in gear and just boom.
Maybe it's the connection to the little child that never had a voice, because as children, we actually don't have a voice. Most of us don't have a voice. There are children that are born into families where they do have a voice, but I think most children, per definition, have no voice because they know nothing of this reality. So their parents will tell them how this reality works, and you have no voice. So it's a silent world for a child.
Yeah.
And
well,
when you, go ahead.
Can I share something real quick? I was talking to my wife last night. So we have 4 kids, and I said, my son is who I would be had I not dealt with all the abuse. And I look at him, and Lauren said, yeah, I think Cameron, I see her as like who I would be, our oldest, who I would be if I didn't have abuse. And I said, it's so beautiful that we get to raise them to be who they are, but also we get to experience who we are through them. And there's this, I don't know, 2 years ago, I wasn't allowed to cry, even after I was hurt or whatever. So crying was not allowed. And I've had this imprint of saying, don't, like, it's like anger, like, don't cry. And I'm like, okay, I want my kids to cry. I don't want to tell them to tough it out, but I want them to be tough. Where's the line? I want them to express themselves. This is all the calibration that's happening in real time when something's happening in my home. So 2 years ago, Colin was crying, and my default was to say, stop crying. And he kept crying and crying. I was holding space, and I'm like, and then I was like, okay, buddy, that is not right. I was like, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. And Lauren's like, come on, what are you doing? And I was like, and I could tell that something in him, like, it hurt him, that basically I was saying, you're wrong now. You've crossed. So he's about to go upstairs to go to bed. And I grabbed him. I'm like, hey, bud, I'm sorry. I told you can cry as long as you need to cry. I'm sorry I said that. I said, I'm working on, when I was crying, I wasn't allowed to cry. I'd get in trouble if I cried. And he looked at me, as this 4.5-year-old looked at me and said, well, that's mean. And I was like, you know what, buddy?
That is
mean. That is mean. That is mean. And so it's interesting to hear this 4.5-year-old who is able to use his voice.
Connected
to me, that it was mean that I wasn't allowed to use my voice. And so many of us as adults were not allowed to use our voice. And it's time that we we learn this.
Yeah, absolutely. Allowing the thoughts that you have to express themselves in words. For me, I couldn't express the thoughts that I had. So the pattern that it became in my life as a young woman, I couldn't share my thoughts. I had to hide them all the time. The hiding, oh my God, it takes so much energy to not tell what you see in this reality, because you will be punished if you tell what you see. So you start thinking that, okay, so this is my world, and then there's the outer world, and I need to control what I say and how I say it. I was brought up to think that I was an angry child, that I was arrogant, that I didn't smile, because my brother was always smiling, he was always funny, he was doing stuff, and I wasn't, because I didn't like where I was. And if I would have said, I don't like this, I want something else, I would be punished. So I had to not say anything, which means that you put on a poker face. If I express anger, then they will know that I don't like it. If I falsely say, yes, I like it, they will see that I'm not being authentic and honest. So I had to put on a poker face, and that was my poker face. It looked like an arrogant, angry child. That was my poker face. And not being able to express it in words, it cripples you. I mean, look at me. I'm writing books. I'm talking all the time, and I could not do that as a child. Everything that went on in my head, not outside. It's an overdose of the masculine principle within a child, because here's the thing: when you are using the masculine principle in order to solve a problem, you will not allow the problem to come out until you're done with it. So you solve it in your head. You're not sharing it with anyone, because that would be to, pull down the covers, show yourself, and that might be dangerous. So you keep it in your head, and when you're done, you verbalize the solution. That's the masculine energy in a solution. The feminine energy in a solution would look like you share it with everyone. You say, I have a problem. What do you think? What do you think? And it's outside of your head, being shared with everyone. So everyone can give you their input, and then you bring it back into your head and you choose, and you say, okay, I'll go with this. Both ways are needed, and both ways are great. But as a child, I had to live in that masculine principle, not allowing anything out of my mouth. That went totally against who I am. So voicing it, I think this is why I do it this way. I don't think of a problem. I put it out there, and then I look at it, and then I put it. So I'm almost overusing the feminine principle or the feminine side now, because I couldn't do it as a child. But balancing those two will actually make you go far in life, when you can balance those two ways of doing it. And expressing it in words, allowing yourself to express it. I could not. You weren't allowed to cry. I was not allowed to speak. Not ever say anything that was going on in my mind, because that might hurt my father's feelings. And that was not a good thing, because everyone was punished in that sense. So it was very important not to allow it to come out. So of course, when I listen to my own voice, I will go, oh, I don't like that voice. I know somewhere intuitively, when I hear my voice, that this means trouble. So that's why my heart starts racing. And what I want people out there watching this to do is to record themselves and listen. And then be very present when you listen to your voice. What is happening in your body? What is your ego telling you? Is it saying, oh, you sound stupid, or oh, you sound not as good as I thought you would sound? Or is your voice high pitch, or is it too low? Or how are you using your words? Are you expressing yourself correctly? Listen to the sounds, because none of it is true. This is something, a pattern from the past that is pulling ego filters over your eyes telling you that your voice is not good enough. And until you connect to that voice and own it, you will not be able to express yourself from a source, from your true source. Your true inner voice cannot be expressed unless you can listen to those sounds being you and like them.
Yes. When I coach my clients now, I talk about PVTC, pitch, volume, or pitch, volume, tone, and cadence.
Mm-hmm.
Pitch, volume, tone, and cadence. I think those are what I teach is those are the 4 components of our voice. Our pitch, and sometimes we speak high, we speak low. It all conveys something. So pitch, volume, whether it's loud or quiet. And sometimes the most powerful thing we could say is the whisper.
Quiet. Yes.
So pitch, volume, tone. How am I saying it? What if I say no, 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 no? The tone in which we deliver that word is so important. And then the cadence. Cadence is so important to reclaim our own cadence. Like you were saying, you speak more slowly, but you thought you spoke quickly. And I can say to everyone listening, our society has conditioned all of us to think that those who speak fast are more intelligent. So we're hearing all these people just spitting off words. Then everyone listens like, well, I'm not as fast as they must know way more than I do because I don't articulate that fast. Not true. Cadence belongs to each individual who owns their voice. And so if we want to start speaking fast, then we can pull it back like a river and back it up. I then go in again. It's up to us. So pitch, volume, tone, and cadence. Those are the 4 components of our voice. And like you said, when we record it and listen to it, there will be this spectrum where we might not like it. We might not like it. We might not like it. And then we practice again. We do it again. We listen and if we start exploring with pitch, volume, tone, and cadence, it becomes fun because you're like, well, what can I sound like? What can I sound like? You start playing and it becomes childlike because it's fun. It's a game. Something happens when we can hear not what we're saying, but who is saying it. And that is it.
Yes. I was thinking, especially when you listen to the tone. The tone is more intuitive and you cannot always catch it while you're speaking. So let's say that you're nervous and you're speaking, your tone will always, it will always show you if there is a hidden agenda underneath the surface, if it is coming from your shadow, or if it comes from the light, if it comes from your negative side of ego. If you are triggered, you can hear that in your tone if you're triggered.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's they say energy doesn't lie. And
it doesn't.
My wife will be like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. Well, no, that's not true. I heard you say it. I'm like, oh, dang it. Okay.
Yeah, she could hear your hesitation and then you said it here. So she knows that it didn't come out the way it's supposed to come out. Yep. Of course, it says so much more. The energy behind the word always hides in the tone. Always in the tone. Also, of course, how fast you speak, but usually in the tone. You will know your intention, your true intention, when you listen to the tone of your voice, how you're speaking. And I love that. Going back, the important thing is when you listen to the recording of yourself, it's so important to do it in a relaxed, fun state. Yes. You're not supposed to kick yourself and hit yourself because you don't sound the way you want to sound. This is a question of playing around and also opening up to more knowledge about yourself, becoming more aware of your own triggers, your own energy, who you are behind the words. As you say, who is speaking these words? Also, it shows you your relationship to the one that you're speaking to. For me, it's easier to really be rooted in my aligned self when I'm speaking to loving people who are listening and responding in a loving way, where we are having a conversation, not an argumentation.
Yes, right. Right.
And in school, you're never in a conversation. You're always either answering or you're quiet, which means that it can be right or it can be wrong.
Right.
And of course, that will put you in a place where your voice is used in the wrong way, because it comes from the negative side of your ego. It is the ego speaking, not your true voice. Your true voice would say, you know what? I'm going. And then you would leave the room because it's not nice, but you have to stay.
Or,
so,
you know what?
yeah.
I don't understand what you're saying right
now. Exactly. I don't understand. Can you please repeat?
Yes.
But you don't say it, because there is the ego would say, don't say that.
Right.
That might sound stupid. You don't want to sound stupid. Shut up. So you don't say anything.
Okay. This brings me to Gloriana asked a great question, because the inner voice, what you just said, we tell ourselves to shut up. She said, is it possible that the voice is rooted in love when it's directed towards others, and rooted in fear when we are talking to ourselves? I ask because I don't feel any problem expressing it to others, yet I struggle to use my words to support myself.
Yes, that is absolutely so, because we have been practicing this negative ego. This bully has been there all the time, that we actually don't know how it feels to be kind to ourselves. It's by default. This negative side of our ego, no one can hear it on the outside. So it makes it almost like it doesn't matter. No one can hear that. So it doesn't matter what I say to myself. It matters what I say to others, because others can hear it. So it will reflect on my identity towards others. But no one can hear what's going on in my head. So that must be the truth. And the negative side of the ego will never allow you to be kind to yourself. You actually have to think about that and say, okay, shut up. Let's hear it. What's the positive side of this?
That's right.
And this is where, actually, speaking about the archetypes that we wanted to speak about, is a way to bypass the ego, the negative side of ego. Because as I say, we can't bypass the ego totally, but we can bypass the bully, the negative side of ego. And playing around with the archetypes of the warrior, the magician, the lover, and the queen, king, sovereign archetype, bringing them out within us and listening to what would they say. So if we would do an exercise, let's say that we want to bring out the warrior in us. So you have to stand up. You have to use your body in a way that a warrior would use its body. So where do you feel the warrior in your body?
I feel it down in my gut.
Gut, yes, there. A lot of people point at their chest and they hit themselves like this. This is where the warrior is. So asking yourself, being in this warrior state, what does the warrior sound like? Well, growling probably, or like this, scaring others off. So let's say that you want to put out a boundary, but you don't know how to do it. You bring out the warrior in you. You stand like a warrior, power posture, and then you ask, what does the warrior in me say? And listen, the warrior will say, all I need to do is ... Or all I need to remember is this. And it will come when you stand in the quiet space in your head, being the warrior, feeling it in your body. Put on some music that will remind you of the posture, the power, and then ask the question, what would the warrior say? All you need to do is, or all you need to remember is.
Yes.
And just stand in it. The answer is always there. It will never, ever fail you. The same thing goes, because the warrior never gives up, which means that you will connect to the part of you that will never give up, that will fight to the end, that will show you where the boundaries are, that will help you stay in your sovereignty, in a sense.
Right.
The next thing, let's say that you don't know how to handle a situation. You would evoke the magician in you. Where would you feel the magician in you?
More in my hands and head, more playful.
Yes, exactly. For me, it's like I almost feel like my pineal gland starts to because the magician can do anything, is all powerful, can do anything. It's like playing with the energies, arranging reality to become the way I want it to be. It's the same thing when you're in the role of the magician. You feel like your pineal gland is on, your hands are working, and then you go, what does the magician say? All I need to do is, and then you see yourself shift stuff over to this side or to this side, rearrange it, and you get the answer. All I need to remember is that I am all powerful.
Yes.
The third thing would be if you want to solve something with a loved one, but you do not know how to do it because you're in an agitated state, or your negative side of ego wants you to win a battle, you evoke the lover in you. And where is the lover in your body?
That is in my heart here.
Yes, the heart area. So you touch your heart and you say, what would the lover in me do? You breathe in and you say, what would the lover in me do? All I need to do is, and then ... feel it in your heart. All I need to remember is, usually it would be, this too shall pass, or this is not as important as I think it is, or I need to go and hug him or her. You will get the answer by standing in that frequency, because you align through the principles of love with your highest self, using these archetypes to focus your energy on the problem. And solve it with a voice that is disconnected from the negative side of your ego. The negative side of your ego can't do anything when you start playing around with these archetypes, because they will always give you the positive answer.
Yes.
So it silences the ego. And the last thing would be to connect to the queen or king or the sovereign within you.
Yes.
Where do you feel the sovereign within you, in your body, or how does the sovereign feel for you?
It's back in the back of my head. When I talk on these lives, I always identify where my throne is, and it sits back and it observes, and it's very still. It's like,
it owns its own space. For me, when I think about the king or the queen within me, I feel like I'm expanding so that I own the space around me. But I also am reminded of what a queen does or a king does. And that is not rule, because that would be the negative side of ego. It is to serve. So I remind myself that, okay, I am here to serve and this is my space, but it also reminds me of my integrity and my authenticity and my agency, so that I become whole when I think of that. And it takes care of me and my energy. It doesn't allow others to come and, change my frequency, because I own the space around me. And I'm also from a loving space where you own the space around you. And that's how you bypass the negative side of your ego. Just going into these, what would a warrior do? What would a magician do? What would a queen or king do? What would the lover in me do? And literally invoke them in you so that you will feel the frequency of it. We all have different descriptions of what a warrior is or a magician is, and it doesn't matter. It's your description of it that is your specific take on that, and use that energy to play around with it. It's really fun to do this, really fun to do it. And it gives you so many answers, which will be hidden because your negative side of ego doesn't want you to see them.
Right. And can you imagine if the king had the negative voice inside itself? It'd be, if the warrior had the negative voice inside itself, this would never work. And yet we keep, that's why it's such a beautiful exercise. And also picture, like when we picture those archetypes, there is no fear in any of those archetypes. It's only love and playfulness, trust, abundance, sourcing, creation. There's no fear in that.
No, it isn't, because if you would look at it through the negative side of ego, well, the warrior becomes a soldier that is mindless. That's not the same thing. It's not.
Becomes a dictator.
Yes,
It just
exactly.
becomes a pharmaceutical company. No, I'm just kidding. And the lover becomes a weirdo. And I don't know.
Yes, it becomes, yes, 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 absolutely. So you know the difference between it. And this is also why you have to connect it in your body. When you think warrior, where is it in your body? When you stand in that power position, you
Right.
will feel the energy in your body. So
Right.
the energy never lies. If you start thinking about it, it might be, not maybe the right frequency, but if you feel it in your body, if you start feeling it in your body, if you stand like one and you feel it in your body, and say, here, as you say, it's in my gut. I feel the magician in my gut. So you need to define, where do I feel it in my body and how does it feel? And then the energy of that will go through your heart and connect to your brain. And that's where the answers are. You will already know the answer, but it's not in words until it connects to your brain and you can verbalize it.
Right.
So that's why you need to start with your body, feel the energy, and then send it up to your mind where you ask the question and the answer comes. And then it can come out through your mouth or in action, like when you want to hug someone. But it's the vocalization of this. That is how you find your inner voice, by connecting to these archetypes, by connecting to the principles of love within you. So, connecting to the principles of love, it might feel like, oh, I need to love everyone. Well, not if you want to set a boundary. This is where you need to connect to the warrior and say, okay, I love you, but you cannot cross this line.
That's right.
That's a loving act coming from love. That's the confusion, when you say, well, everything has to be rooted in love. And it comes out as something that might be harmful to you. That is why it's so good to use these archetypes to connect to the truth, your true voice, not something that New Age people will tell you. Well, we all need to love each other. Yes, we do, but we need to put out boundaries too. Yes. It's an important thing. There is love in putting out a boundary. There is love in it.
There's a saying that fences make good neighbors. And why would that be so? Well, let's just say, in this analogy of boundaries, the boundaries make good relationships because there's a clear line. But let's say that two people live next to each other. They have a backyard and one has a dog, one doesn't. And they say, let's just remove the fence in between us. We're all one here. This is our earth. Yes. Let us be and live in as one. Okay. And the dog just one day goes and poops in the other person's backyard. And this person's like, and the person who owns the dog doesn't pick up the poop. And the person that had poop in their backyard is like, hey, can you pick up your dog? Oh no, it's all good. Dog does it again and again and again. Pretty soon the person that doesn't own the dog is the one with all the shit. Yes. And the one who has the dog isn't concerned about the other person. That doesn't work. It creates conflict.
Absolutely.
So the boundary is what creates healthy neighbors. The boundary is what creates healthy relationships. The boundary is what creates a healthy individual.
Yeah. The boundary, the one that comes from love, releases the other person from the responsibility of making you happy, or being a mind reader to know what you want and don't want. If you don't say what you want and don't want being the boundary, then they have to guess, which is energy draining. As a young woman, I thought that my husband was a mind reader, so he knew what I needed, and he didn't. So I was so sad when he didn't give me what I wanted, even though I didn't tell him, or did something that I didn't like, even though I didn't tell him.
Right.
And that is to put all responsibility on him for my own happiness. That does not work.
Right.
So you have to shift your mind and say, okay, so where are the loving boundaries? What is it that I actually do want? It's much easier. It's not a question of angry telling someone, you know what, this is it. It's not about that. It's about saying, this is what I like, and this is how I would want it to be. And that's a way to set a boundary. If
Right.
that doesn't work, well, into the warrior mode and say, okay, what do I need to do? And say, here, but not further. And I do love you. And that's it.
Yes. Nice.
So understanding that there are so many different ways of showing love, not just accepting everything as it is.
Right.
Because you have to take responsibility for your own space and your own happiness and your own adventure in this reality.
And it takes practice.
Yes.
And so everyone listening, give yourself a year to learn this, maybe months. It's not going to happen overnight. So just know you will learn it as you continue to practice. You will find your voice as you continue to record it and listen to it. But it takes it's just practice.
It does. And it's really in the beginning, it can be so unpleasant, specifically to listen to your own voice.
Yeah.
But trust me, I don't know anyone who likes their voice, except my husband, of course. But that is unique. But truly, there are not many people that like their own voice, and there is a reason for this. You have to look at it. What is it that makes me not want to listen to what makes me nervous when I listen to my own voice? What is it? And then just looking at it from a loving perspective, being kind to yourself while you listen to it, you might find that it's not at all that horrible. You might connect immediately with it and say, hey, I have a beautiful voice.
Right. I want to read. So I wrote this book in 2017. Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face, how to develop your story and achieve your dreams. But in it, I talk about when I was a TV reporter, my very first time, I'd have to read a script, but it didn't sound natural the way I was reading it. I was not connected to my own voice. And then when I was on camera, I was so unsure of where to put my hands. What do I do with my body? It's just so weird. I'm standing in front of a camera and I'm talking. And so I started watching myself the next morning, looking at my mannerisms, going into the mirror and like, oh, that's what my face does, or this is what my body does. And I write in my book a recommendation for everyone to do this. I said, I used to be a TV reporter. As much fun as I had telling different stories each day, at first it wasn't easy doing it on live TV. Looking natural on camera takes a lot of practice. So I'm going to be talking about on camera, but it's the same applicable to our voice, so how we sound. You're speaking at an inanimate object that gives you no feedback. Looking natural while telling a story is more than just an art. It's hard work. Each day I got into the newsroom before my shift. I would watch and listen to myself report the news from the night before to observe my mannerisms and vocal inflections. I was looking for ways I can improve on how I delivered the stories I reported on. After watching and listening to myself, I'd make the change that day. And I was always practicing. I would do different things like, okay, I noticed I would start like, good morning, everyone. And so then I'd practice like, good morning, everyone. I would just like whatever, because I was the morning reporter at my first market. For instance, when I first started, I didn't know what to do with my hands when I was reporting. This is a common issue people face when they're in front of the camera. The overdone and unnatural tendency is to put the index finger and thumb of each hand together, making a sort of a triangle. And that is exactly what I did. Yeah, exactly right. My first few days on air. But then I realized I never see people talking like that in person off camera. So doing it was unnatural and inauthentic. So I corrected where my hands went, and the outcome was a more pleasant delivery of the story. Once I was aware of how I delivered the stories, I practiced every day at getting better on my delivery. I got better, and so did my career. I encourage you to do the same thing with your story or your voice. Record your voice, speak out loud over and over again. You could actually record or write out affirmations or what you love about yourself and record it and speak that over yourself. And doing it, although feeling unnatural in the beginning, will eventually flow out of you naturally and with passion. And that's if I could bless everyone, it is to overcome, face the fear inside, find the voice and speak forth.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing because you're actually describing almost in detail what happens when you're in front of a camera. But this can happen when you're in front of a person where you feel insecure with that person. So you start thinking about what is the person thinking about me? And you become, this is where the negative side of ego takes hold of you and starts projecting you into the future, the very near future, because you want to control the situation by knowing what the other person is thinking about you. So you are not present. And that is why words come out in a very strange way, because you're not present to correct them, control them, to own the words.
Yeah.
I remember when I was on stage and I had this epiphany moment. I knew exactly what I was going to speak about. I had trained myself for this, and I went up on stage and I started speaking, and it didn't sound like me. It sounded like it was outside of me when I was speaking. I did what I was supposed to do, but it was like a sound outside of me. And then I took some time in my head and I was thinking, what am I doing here? Where does this come from? What is it that I want to share with these people?
Yes.
I'm not here to deliver a speech. I am here to share some knowledge. So they're not here to judge me. They are here to receive knowledge from me. Am I really doing this the right way? So I kind of stopped in the midst of all of this and then started thinking, okay, screw the PowerPoint. I need to speak from my heart. So I started speaking from a presence within me, connected and aligned with me. And it was so energy boosting to do this because there's a true connection. It's not a deliverance, it's a true connection. And it's so funny because I could hear my voice outside of my head and I was thinking, who is doing this speaking? It's not me. Because I'm not here. I'm looking, I'm scanning the audience to see if everyone is okay, if everybody likes what I'm saying. That's my ego. That's the negative side of my ego going, you have to check this because what if they don't like it? Well, that's not what I'm here for. I am here for, and you have to find it. I mean, look at the goal of why am I standing on stage? Well, I'm standing here because I want to share something with them.
Yes.
What is it that I want to share? And then it just comes out of you. Also, I'm talking very much with my hands. I remember in the beginning, I got the advice that do not use your hands. Everybody that speaks, they stand, like you say, with your hands like this or this. For me, I felt like a crippled person because I couldn't move my hands. And then I started, no, it's okay, because it's a dance where the words and the movements are in unison. They're synchronized. And I can't hold my hands together and then deliver a speech. Because that is what it becomes, a deliverance. If I use my hands the way my body wants to use them because I am present, it becomes much easier. So it's a question of tuning into what feels good for you, not how do everyone else do this. It's more like where am I present? Where am I in all of this? Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It really, that's a really cool example because you could hear, you were almost sitting in the audience viewing yourself and you were,
yes, my ego going, oh, you're not moving, you're standing still, your hands are all over the place, hold your hands together. This is what I hear. How can I be present? How can I share truly from an aligned space with someone else? But I think that most of us are conditioned into not being present because we are always trying to protect ourselves from harm from teachers and bullies and everyone else around us because we need to be in a certain way in order to be accepted. So it's an existential thing going on. If you can overwin that by just being present and connected, then it's so much easier to own your voice, but also to control that negative ego voice speaking, telling you, oh, check this. Instead, you're present and you are the one directing, like the masculine the positive masculine energy, the healthy masculine energy, which is about direction. Where am I directing this?
Yes. Yes.
Tapping into that. So important.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
This is so good. This is so good. I bless everyone with their voice to find it. That is,
Yes.
I remember when I got it, and it changed everything for me. Everything. It really did. It changed everything.
Yeah, it does, because it becomes a true part of your identity. Becomes a true vibration coming from source, which also creates space for others to feel secure in your presence. So you don't need to have a deep voice in order to keep people safe and protected. What you do need to is to align the frequency from your source with the frequency of your voice, your perfect match of those two. It's like a fingerprint. It will never be the same for you as it is for me. But what could be the same is when we're connected to the source within us and we speak from that source, filtered through the positive ego, creating space for others to be there. This is what being your authentic self means, to have those two aligned.
That's right. That's right. So good.
Yes. Good. And I know that 1 hour has already passed, and it's so quickly. These Sunday lives go so quickly.
Yes. Thank you for this great conversation. This was really
good. Thank you.
This is good. And
Loved it.
Gloriana, thank you for watching. Everyone else who watched, thank you. And we will see everyone next Sunday.
Yes, we will. See you next Sunday.